where these came from. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about artificial intelligence here, and I want to cover 5 things. And the first and the last hopefully will be the longest. The 3 middle hopefully will be relatively brief. So just want to, get you up to speed on the history of AI, where it came from. So sometimes that's helpful to understand the full story and not just the current news. I want to talk just really briefly about where it's headed, some things that might be coming with it. I want to talk briefly again, really briefly, how it works. Like how does it actually work technically? And then some downsides and upsides, just some positive things that I have experienced or that people have experienced, as well as some downsides that people have experienced. And then how might we think about AI? Okay, we good? We ready for that? So, okay, a brief history. I'm going to start with a question, and I guess whoever gets closest gets to go first in the lunch line. Okay, so don't answer out loud yet, just answer in your head. What year do you think AI started? Artificial intelligence. What year did it start? Again, don't yell it out. Don't yell it out. Just in your head. I'm gonna ask for honest answers here in just a second. Okay, everybody kind of have their answer? Okay, maybe just don't be embarrassed. We're all friends. Oh, it is recorded, but nobody will know who it is that's saying it. So, what do you think? What year? What
2012.
year? 2012, Elsie says.
1994.
94. Steele.
2014.
2014.
62.
Maybe 50.
50, 62. The wiser voices in the room are coming with good answers. It is much earlier than you would think. So this is not the beginning of AI, but has anybody heard of Gulliver's Travels? Famous book. They had the engine in that was a mechanical device that could create new text. It's kind of like ChatGPT before ChatGPT. That was just an idea, but the official answer, so whoever got closest to this goes first in line in lunch, but the official answer was the term artificial intelligence was coined in 1956 at a conference at Dartmouth. Now, does anybody recognize this person? Has anybody seen the movie The Imitation Game?
Is that the guy that broke the code?
Yes.
An Enigma code.
Yes, that's him. That's what the movie's about. It's Alan Turing.
Alan Turing.
Yeah, he was a British mathematician. To Milton's point, he played a very important role in World War II in breaking the secret communications of the Germans, enabling the British to save a lot of lives. He is a huge figure in the history of AI as well. He created something called the Turing machine, which only David and I would be interested in, most likely, but he's well known for the Turing test. People will not well known like everybody's heard of it, but the Turing test is a commonly known thing that in 1950 people were debating how would we even know if a machine was intelligent? Like what would the test be? And people were getting very philosophical and like, well, what is intelligence? And how do we know if a machine? He said, look, here's the Turing test. You put a machine in a room, you have a human interact with it, and if they can't tell it's a human or not, then you've passed the test. So he sort of just kind of cut through it. It was called the Turing test, and that was the official. And Georgia Tech did this. I think it was before David and after me, where they actually had a TA, teacher's assistant, who was a bot. I don't know if they told stories about that, or they had a teacher's assistant who was a bot, and they didn't tell the students, and they just tried to see, would anybody recognize that it was different than the actual human teacher's assistants. But this is Alan Turing, and that was in 1950, again, 75 years ago. People were thinking about how do we know if a machine is intelligent, that it has artificial intelligence. AI did not begin with ChatGPT. Alan Turing. Okay, this is John McCarthy. He's the one who coined the term. Look at that computer. Kids are getting a lot of giggles. This was 1956, a conference in Dartmouth. He founded the term artificial intelligence. He coined it. Now, really quickly, again, we're in the 50s. We're talking about history. We're in the 50s. And there were 2 basic approaches to artificial intelligence. How do we make machines think? was the question. And the early approach, again, this is not before computers existed. Again, kids, it's probably impossible for you to fathom this, but like the internet didn't exist, smartphones didn't exist, personal computers didn't exist. This was before any of that. People were thinking about it, but we didn't have any of that. You couldn't go on the internet, you didn't have a phone. So there were two approaches to how we might approach making a computer think. The early approach was what you might think of if you were in those days. Like if you wanted to make a computer think, you would ask the question, well, how do people think? And you might try to model it, right? That seems like a very logical way to approach it. And I'm, no biologist by any stretch, but just remember back to 8th grade biology, or I don't know when it's taught, 9th grade biology. Y'all remember them talking about neurons, brain cells, and this on the left, I think for y'all, is a AI generated, not a real, AI generated picture of a neuron, but these are tiny cells that have little roots called dendrites that catch messages, catch electrical or chemical signals, and then they have the body of the cell where there's some processing done, and then they send out outgoing messages, again, electrically or chemically, to other neurons. And EEGs, y'all have heard of EEGs? Like if you go to the doctor and you need to have an EEG done, electroencephalography. It was developed in the decades right before then, the 40s, 50s, 30s, and that was helping them to think through, okay, well, how do brains work? And let's try to model it this way. Could we make a machine just like this? It wasn't until the 1990s, when functional magnetic resource, or magnetic resonance, fMRI, came out. And that became important later on in the story, but they didn't have that at the time. They just had EEGs. And there was an attempt to make a machine. And in 1958, a person named Marvin Minsky, remember this guy? He and John McCarthy, Marvin Minsky, were two of the founders of AI, fathers of AI. And he developed a machine called a perceptron that worked like this. It was like just a very few of these like artificial neurons that could do some very simplistic things. But in 1969, there was a paper who wrote a critique of this. It's never going to work. Machines are never going to work that way. And in the 60s, all pursuit of this type of artificial intelligence ended. In fact, there was a stigma almost associated with anyone who pursued it this way. It was just not going to work. We weren't going to be able to make machines that looked like human brains, human neurons, artificial neurons. And no funding and no academic interest pursued this at all. And all work, not all, because like even in the 80s there was a really important finding called backpropagation, which you don't need to know what that is, but there were small little circles of people, but they weren't able to publish their papers, they weren't able to pursue it very strongly because there was just a stigma, there was no interest in this. Rather, the second approach, which was called like expert systems or symbolic knowledge. And this is very much the way that I grew up developing programs. It's very, very different. Like I said, I don't even know biology hardly. I'm not your strongest biologist in the room, right? That's not how I've been a computer scientist for 25 years. I work for those who don't know me, I work as a computer programmer as a day job. This is how we've written programs for 25 years. You program the computer to do certain things, as opposed to saying, hey, let's make the computer like a brain and let it operate like our brains do. We're the brains, we're going to tell the computer how to do it with a long set of rules. That's how we've programmed for decades now. And you can think of it, like I put a cookbook up there, right? Like, just think any experts, think of something you're really good at, something you know how to do. Now you need to teach that to a computer. You got to write out all the rules of that, right? Like, if this happens, then you do that. If not, that's not easy, right? I mean, you think even simple things, it's not easy to fully detail your expertise in that. Have you ever tried to explain something you're really good at to someone who doesn't know how to do it? And a computer doesn't know how to do it, right? You got to teach it. So it's not easy, and it took decades And we made some progress. There were, in the 60s and 70s, there were some of these systems where, we developed exactly how to, analyze chemicals or diagnose infections or play chess. Have y'all heard of Deep Blue, the IBM machine? You could teach it. If you worked really hard and wrote enough code, you could teach it to do one thing really well. But people were like, this is going nowhere. It takes tons of money, takes tons of time, and it can play chess, but it's dumb as a rock otherwise. And so kind of the whole idea of artificial intelligence was is never going to work. And funding, interest, this was called the dark winter of AI, the 80s and 90s, people were kind of giving up on it, the AI winter. But there was, in the 2000s, so whoever said 2000, you were close. It began much earlier, but there was a huge change in the 2000s with a breakthrough coming in 2012. And there were three big developments that led to this. First, tons of data became available. If you think before, what happened in the late 90s was the internet became public, right? People started uploading all kinds of things to the internet. Before that, there wasn't a lot of data. You think as humans, you think, how do we learn, right? We have lots of experiences. We process inputs day after day. These kids that are here, they're bringing in inputs. They're seeing things, hearing things, day after day after day, and that's how they're growing to be intelligent. Well, computers didn't have that. But with the advent of the internet and all this coming up, there's tons of data out there now that it can train on that wasn't available before. Second, there was new hardware that made mathematical computations really fast. I mean, computers have been fast, but you've all heard of CPUs maybe? When you buy a computer, it has a CPU. Well, there's something called GPUs that were developed for gamers. They're graphical processing units. They were developed to make game graphics really cool and amazing. Well, at some point in that process, there was this realization that they could do math really fast. And with all this data, they needed machines that could do math really fast to be able to pursue artificial intelligence. And we had them. And so this company, NVIDIA, has anybody ever heard of NVIDIA? It's the largest company in the world. And I saw one hand. It's the biggest company in the world now because they were the small little gaming company making these chips. And then they bet everything on, we're going to make our chips work on artificial intelligence. And now they've surpassed every other company in the world in terms of market capitalization. Jensen Huang is the CEO. I just finished his biography. And then new algorithms. I mentioned backpropagation. fMRI came out where we could study what happens in somebody's brain when they see a dog or when they see, we could see what was really happening in people's brains or in animals' brains. And then this guy here is just a programmer that nobody's ever heard of. You'll never hear of him again after today. But his name is Alex Krzyzewski. And there were, like I said, less interest in AI. People were kind of giving up on it, but there were still people trying. And there was this contest called ImageNet that they held every year, where you would supply your algorithm, your program, to try to classify images. That's a dog, that's a house, that's a boat. And all these people were programming, like I do, like writing lots of lines of code to teach a computer how to do it. Well, this guy went back to that old way of saying, well, let's make it work the way human brains do. And again, I have to explain how it works, and I will in a second, but let's try that other path. And with all those advances in data and GPUs and processing, the ability to process, and the new algorithms, backpropagation being the big one, but something called, things that we learned with fMRI, his system, which they called AlexNet, blew away all the others. Blew away all the others in terms of being able to recognize images as a computer. And all of a sudden, a huge change happened in academia and in the study of this. There was a recognition that early way of thinking about it, if I go back to that early way of trying to make computers work like our brains was actually the right way. That it was actually the promising way. So, sorry, I'm going too fast. So that changed everything in 2012. He programmed a system that had artificially 650,000 neurons, which is like a honeybee, if you think about in terms of how many neurons a biological animal has. And again, he crushed the competition. And everything changed. much more interest now, much more funding towards this, much more research, and all in sort of this new way of approaching it. And all this was in academia. None of us experienced, none of us knew in 2012 something big happened, right? Nobody knew. You might have started to see it in Netflix recommendations or in Siri being, a Siri assistant and those kind of things. But it wasn't until 2017 that we started to notice it. And that's when ChatGPT really first started. The early versions were really bad, but they got really good. How many have used something like ChatGPT or Google Gemini? By a lot more young hands than older hands. It's amazing. I mean, I honestly feel like I should show you a demo if you really haven't seen it. But, I thought through that I might need to show a demo here, and I just went to it and I said, for instance, this is a really silly example, but I said, hey, look at Grace Bible Church's doctrinal statement and make a song for me, And it did. In 5 seconds, I had a little ditty, that was based on our doctrinal statement. Like, it's just, like, again, nobody programmed lines of code that said, okay, when someone asks you to look at a doctrinal statement, do this, and when they ask you to line, like, nobody programmed it to do that, right? It's been built to work more similarly to how human brains work. Like, if I asked you, you might not even know how you do it, but if I said, hey, look at our doctrinal statement and write it, you'd immediately start thinking in certain ways, right? And we don't, like I said, it's not always obvious how we do that, but that's how we've gotten computers now to do. And I can explain how that works in just a second as we get to the third. But the main point is, and I'm not going to show a live demo now, I want to get to the end, so it does feel like a Sunday school class. We're talking about how we might think about this and how God might want us to think about it. But that's what has come. Now that's the history. And there's a lot of gaps in there, but at least starts to get you feeling. And I want to talk just two things about the future as I think about where is this going. Again, I mentioned early systems were expert systems. We taught them to do one thing really well, but it was like, this is dumb. I'm going to have to teach it to do every single thing I'm going to invest on. And then this breakthrough was like, oh, actually, we can teach it to be more like the way humans think. We can teach computers to be more like that. And now that's opened up things like GPT, where we can generate all kinds of. My job as a computer programmer will never be the same, because these things can write programs much faster than I can and much better. It doesn't mean I won't be needed. I don't think I'm going to lose my job tomorrow, but it will not be the same. And that will be true about a lot of things in our life. And, as I think about the future, what might come, again, we're not just teaching it to play chess. It can do a broad variety of things, but there are things that it can't do. And these are things that people are actively working towards to make it be able to do. And we don't know when the next big breakthrough will come. Will it be tomorrow? Will it be 20 years? We don't know. But here are some of the things. One is something called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. This is impossible to see on the slide. I understand it looks just like a bunch of colors. But what it is, it's called ARC-AGI, and it's just a test that any human can pass. If you looked at it long enough, you would be able to pass it. You would be able to learn it. 100% of humans can do it. But even the best AIs right now cannot do that. In fact, there's $1 million prize to do it at a certain price point. And no one has been able to do it, but it's just general intelligence. Like, how can you learn? How can you take what you don't know and problem solve and learn a new thing would be one way to describe it. So the way AI works today is it's been trained on everything in the past, all the data that's out there, the internet, right? But if you ask it a simple thing like, and I should have shown a picture, but like, hey, here's a pattern. I want you to tell me, and here's a pattern, here's an output, here's a pattern, now here's another pattern. What's the new output? It struggles to do that. It struggles to think more generally and to learn from, oh, I see, okay, the red one goes there. Okay, so then with this one, it would look like this. Any human can do that, but a machine can't yet do that. The amazing things it can do are amazing, but it can't do something simple like that, which is learn from seeing something. So this, from the website, it focuses on tasks that humans solve effortlessly, yet AI finds challenging, which highlight fundamental gaps in AI's reasoning and adaptability. So its ability to reason, its ability to adapt is less than humans still. Even though it can program faster than me, even though it can write songs faster than me, it can do a lot of things much better, its ability to reason and adapt is still not there. And that's what's being focused on. Again, people are putting big dollars out there for people to teach an artificial intelligence machine to be able to do this. And then secondly, robotics. Everything I've mentioned so far has been in the virtual world. It's been on a computer screen, right? I didn't mention my job is on a computer screen. I'm writing software, but plumbers and electricians and like their job is not impacted by this tremendously right now. But a future is coming where robotics are going to be combined with AI to do things in the real world. I mean, this is what Willem does, minus the AI, right? Willem is working as our son Willem, who doesn't know him. He's a mechanical engineer and he's building robotics. And I remember as a kid, I mean, I'm 50 now. I remember as a kid, my dad worked for Ford Motor Company, going to the assembly plant, and they had robots 40 years ago building cars. I mean, but we're talking more generally purpose robots, like what I have on the screen here. Elon Musk, who you've heard of, who owns Tesla and X or Twitter, he says he thinks that 80% of their revenue in the future will be robotics, because we're going to have these things interacting in our world using the knowledge that they have, doing tasks, not just building software or something like that, or not just writing songs or poetry or books or novels or news reports, all the things which AI can do now, but interacting in the world. Okay, how it works. I will not spend as much time on this as possible. And again, David can explain, I can explain, we can ask questions, and we'll have question and answer time at the end if you want to know more about how it works, but I'll try my best to just explain it at a high level. If I said, hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the... Hey, y'all are good. How did you know that? You've memory, yeah, you've heard it. You've been exposed to that enough times, right? You've got a lot stored in that brain of yours. You probably when's the last time you heard that? Years probably, right? But it's stored in your brain. You had that experience and you learned it. But now imagine your job was to process everything on the internet. Every bit of knowledge that's written down. Well, it's not all knowledge, some of it's foolishness, but every bit of information that's out there, good or bad. You'd need a little more power than your brain. I mean, our brains are amazing things, don't get me wrong, but to process everything, you'd need a lot more power. And that's true of AI as well. It is so hungry for the ability to compute. I mentioned those GPUs. We need to be able to do mathematical calculations really quickly. Again, NVIDIA is the largest company in the world, almost overnight became that. I mean, in Noonan alone, in Coweta County, the county I live in, little old Coweta County, there's like 4 data centers on the ballot right now. Just my little county in small little town Georgia, we're trying to build massive data centers because of the investment in trying to be able to do all this processing. What are being programmed? It's not lines of code, as I mentioned, they're models. Have y'all heard of Grok? Has people heard of Grok? Maybe. I see some heads shaking. Have you heard of Gemini? Everybody's heard of GPT. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It just means it's able to generate things. That's generative. Pre-trained means it's been exposed to all this data out there, and it's trained and learned things, and it can transform. You ask it a question and it can start transforming that question into answer, one word at a time, or one pixel at a time if it's making an image, or one frame at a time if it's making a video. So that's what these are. They're very expensive to train. That's why they're building these data centers. They're extremely expensive to train. They take millions and billions of dollars to train, and then they're amazing when they come out. Those are just examples, and you see from the release date, again, these are all active. These are all, new things that are coming out. Now, on top of those models are applications that you and I interact with, and I just gave 3 there. Amazon. If you look at highlights on Amazon now, like, I wonder if I should buy this product. Those are all, they take human reviews and they've generated summaries using AI. They don't have to hire a reviewer to do that. AI looks at those and knows how to summarize a review from those. Self-driving cars. I had never been in a Tesla before last year. We were out in California visiting the Shees. Those of you who remember the Shees from church here. Obviously David remembers them. But that's the first time I'd ever been in a Tesla. If y'all have never been in a self-driving Tesla, it's amazing. It's astounding to watch that thing drive itself. Volleyball highlights was my introduction to AI. I used to, for Annalise, I used to create highlight videos to send to colleges, and it would take me, Donna can say, it'd take me hours. I'd be in front of the computer 8 hours a week, creating these volleyball highlights to send to college coaches, hoping that she would get recruited. Well, that time, I forget the name of Huddle is the name of the site where they came up with this camera. You just upload your video there, and it generates a highlight video in seconds from it. It's amazing. ChatGPT, those are all other applications that are sitting on top of those models that allow them to work. Now, upsides and downsides about AI. Let me just mention, this is the last before I talk about how we might think about it. But again, it saved me a tremendous amount of time on that volleyball task. Nobody's ever, I've tried to beg Donna to read my master's thesis from school. Nobody will ever pour me. You don't, just pretend like you're sad. I want somebody to read it, Well, I was able to upload it to AI and interact with it. Like, hey, what do you think about this? It was really cool, finally someone to interact with my thesis. Being able to learn new language, medical, there's just fraud detection. There are amazing uses to it. Really amazing uses, but there are also some downsides to it. Donna was talking about a podcast to some of you, like people get emotionally attached to these things. I don't know if you've seen where you can upload pictures of your deceased loved ones and it'll make them come to life. And there's just some weird things out there. It's being used for fraud. If you look on the other column, it can catch fraud really well. It's used for fraud. There was a story where they generated a video of a chief financial officer, CFO, calling their staff saying, hey, I need you to wire X amounts of dollars. There's an emergency. I can't tell you about it. It's a secret project. I need you to wire X amount of dollars over here. And they were like, okay. It's our CFO calling. They saw him. Well, it was a generated video. And they wire the money out, and that money's gone. There was a recruiting agent that Amazon used that was trained on data, and it rejected every female. Because if you look at historically, computer science majors have been all males. That's just the history. And so as it started trying, not all, we have Linda. Linda was an early pioneer in computer science, not as a male, but because that was the data it was trained on, it started rejecting them. It was a poor use of AI. It was making choices that it shouldn't be making. I put up here, this is ChatGPT 4, one of the most recent ones. And you ask it how many R's are in the word strawberry, and it will what's called hallucinate, if you've heard that term. Have you heard that term before? It'll oh, clearly there's 2 R's in the word strawberry, and you're like, man, this is the most amazing piece of equipment that still can't do some of the most basic things. So there are some downsides to it. Imagine trying to turn that on to, make some decision that's really important in the world, and it doesn't know how many R's are in strawberry, So there are some downsides to it as well. Okay, how we should think about it, and then question and answers, and we're done. Okay, to me, it's harder to think about the future than the past. I'm not a prophet. I don't know what's going to come. But I want to do my best to share what I can in terms of discernment about the direction of AI. Again, I don't know where it's going to end. I've told you we're seeking AGI, we're seeking robotics, to be used in the world with us. I don't know if those things will ever be solved. I don't know. But I want to do the best I can to think about discernment of the direction that we're headed. I'm going to organize my thoughts around 5 statements and 2 addendums at the end, 2 short addendums. And then again, we'll have an opportunity for discussion and questions and answers. All right, first statement, 5 statements, 2 addendums. First statement, AI is, in my opinion, the next and maybe culminating amazing invention of mankind. I made fun of it and its strawberry thing, it makes me sad. But I want to say, it is an amazing invention. I don't know if it's the culminating invention of mankind. It's pretty impressive. But it is an amazing next invention of mankind. I think back, do you guys remember in the Tower of Babel? Remember, they were building an amazing tower, a tower that would cause people to look at them and make a name for themselves, up to the clouds, right? And that's not what God had asked them to do. God had asked them to scatter. God had asked them to subdue the earth and, to glorify Him. But they were making this massive tower to make a name for themselves. And what God said was really interesting. The Lord, verse 11, Yahweh came down to see, chapter 11, verse 5, Genesis 11, verse 5. Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. Listen to what God said. Yahweh said, behold, they are one people. They all have the same language, and this is what they began to do. And now nothing which they propose to do will be impossible for them. Now, I don't say that. We're like ChatGPT, like we'll get the number of R's wrong in strawberry. I'm not trying to make humans more than we are, but I don't want it to make us less than we are. God has created us in a way that we have amazing abilities. He looks, and again, we have faults, we're easily deceived. Don't get me wrong, we are not divine, but God looks at the people and says, look at what they've begun. Nothing is going to be impossible for them. And so, in judgment, but also in mercy, He makes it hard on us. He changes our languages so that we're not united to be able to do all the things that would be in our heart to do. I think about even in the garden, when inappropriately we became like God, in a sense. We became knowing good and evil, at least, right? When we ate, we as human race, we ate of the fruit, we became like God. That's what God Himself says. Now that they've become like us, what does He do? He sends them out of the garden, right? And humans are not that impressive. They can't even open their Bibles without it falling apart. I'm in Genesis 3. Yahweh said, verse 22, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. And now lest he stretch out his hand and take from the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore Yahweh sent him out from the Garden of Eden to cultivate. So God was intervening early there. Mankind, He knew the direction. He knew mankind was capable of making amazing things. He says nothing will be impossible for them. But because of sin, because sin is in the world, it doesn't mean our amazing creations will be used for good. The Tower of Babel was not going to be used for good. It wasn't going to be used to glorify God. It was to make a name for themselves. And as I mentioned earlier, our eschatology says that God has been restraining us and will continue to restrain evil until it's His timing to remove that. And in that day, it's very clear in 2 Thessalonians, there are going to be miracles and wonders that are to deceive people. The bad guys are going to do amazing, miraculous things. And God's going to allow it because the tribulation, unlike any other that's come on the world, is going to come at that time. But my point first in this is to say that AI is an amazing creation. And again, if you haven't played with it, you've not been amazed yet. Cell phones, internet, cars, rockets, the Industrial Revolution, all these were amazing inventions. I'm not saying that they haven't led to bad things or hard things, but they were amazing inventions. And this is, right now, the peak invention. I don't know if it's the culminating one, but it is the peak. We have multiplied our ability to move. I mentioned trains, planes. Right? As humans, we can move at a certain speed, right? Well, we've overcome that to where we can fly. I'll fly to Florida tomorrow. You know how long it would take me to get to Florida if I was on a horse or something else? We've made our ability to heal beyond. We've come up with things like penicillin, and we've made some amazing things, but this AI is just as amazing in our ability to know or create or do beyond what we could individually do as humans. So I think it's important that we recognize that. It's an honor to God that we're made in His image, and that as His image bearers, that has been made. Second statement, it doesn't do to discuss whether or not it's something we should pursue. Like a lot of conversations, if you like, is AI something we should pursue? Should we pursue AI? It's coming. It's here. It's not. We're past that question. There have been a lot of discussions about that, but the kids will appreciate this. It's like the One Ring. It's like it's here. Somebody's going to use it. It is here. The godfather of AI is Google. engineer named Jeffrey Hinton. This is no quack. This was the early in Google. He's been working on AI for decades, through the AI winter into this spring of AI. He's now out of Google. He left Google so he could speak about the dangers of AI. Listen to some of these quotes. This is Jeffrey Hinton. This is, again, not a quack. The best way to understand it emotionally is we are like someone who has this really cute tiger cub. Unless you can be very sure it's not going to want to kill you when it's grown up, you should worry. Or he says, super intelligences will be so much smarter than us, we have no idea what they're up to. He says, the Industrial Revolution made human strength irrelevant, right? We were able to use machines that went beyond what individual human could do. AI will make human intelligence irrelevant. People will lose their jobs, and the wealth created by AI will not go to them. But again, Hinton's warnings are falling on deaf ears. We're pursuing it. Elon Musk is a well-known figure who has shifted based on this inevitability. He said in 2014, with AI, we are summoning the demon. This is not a religious person, this is Elon Musk. That's his words. 2017, is AI a fundamental existential risk for human civilization? Was the title of one of his talks. He led calls for a pause in 2023. He said, mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nuclear weapons. Far more. Yet Musk is now pursuing AI with a vengeance, with xAI's Grok being one of, if not the best, model out there. He argues explicitly that since others are, and I don't disagree with him, others are pursuing it, he's going to do the same, but do it in a good way, he says. I don't know if he's possible of doing that, but that's what he says. Again, the largest company in the world by market capitalization is NVIDIA, which makes the hardware for AI. Co-founder and CEO is the 7th richest person in the world. He gets angry when people question whether AI can be dangerous. So he's beyond that. He's like, no, it's not dangerous. I just finished reading his biography. And the last chapter is about, he refuses to answer that question. We're past it. The investment in AI makes early investments in rail, industrial cities, smartphones look minuscule. As I mentioned, Coweta County, 4 data centers. Did you all see the most recent, like Donald Trump, who he was sitting down with recently? It was all the tech leaders. It was Zuckerberg, it was Wong, I don't know who was there. I don't follow the news. Forgive me, I'm not a biologist and nor am I a modern events person. I'm not into politics or science. But I did see, and he's with all these technological leaders. Huge investments in this space. So again, I think we're beyond that question. Third statement. So first statement, it is an amazing creation. Second, we don't need to talk about whether it should or shouldn't come. We're beyond that. It is coming. Third, it does not do to say that AI is evil and we should avoid it. This is the way sometimes we have in church history thought about new inventions. As an example, when radio was first invented or discovered, radio waves, when they were first, people in the church, some, not a large group, but some in the church said it was a tool of the devil. Since Satan is called the prince of the power of the air in Ephesians 2:2. And radio waves work by going through the air. And people avoided it. I have a friend who's a pastor in Noonan, and he says that most of his congregation has this view, that the AI is evil and should be avoided. It is not my view. AI is just an extension of computers. If it is evil, so are they. It is just using computers for more and more powerful processing. AI is no more evil than devices for war, new means of travel, or other advances in computation. I'm not saying every one of those things I just mentioned have been used for evil, and AI will be used for evil. I'm just saying, I'm not afraid of it as a technology. I do not think that it is an evil technology. But it is more powerful. I agree with what Elon said. It is more powerful than all those other things before, especially if we're able to get past some of the roadblocks we are now. And it will be used for amazing good or amazing evil. The problem is not that AI is evil. The problem is that we are, apart from God's grace. And we are the ones stewarding this tool. If AI were to be used to glorify God, it would be an amazing tool for us. Kenneth, I think it was talking to me over break about someone interacting with AI about creation and how it's just saying, yeah, there's no way this started without a designer. You know, I mean, again, the tool itself is not evil, but apart from being used to glorify God, it will lead to suffering. All right, fourth, I have two more statements and then two addendums, and we'll do question and answer. And these last two are my encouragements to us. Two statements of my encouragement. First, we should use AI in our pursuit of glorifying God. Like electricity, I know you get tired of me using that analogy. It's just one I enjoy. It is good but dangerous if you use it carefully. We need to grow at least in our understanding of it. We shouldn't be ignorant of it. I'm not saying we all have to be as smart as David Lee about AI, but we should at least know a little bit about it. We shouldn't be ignorant of it. And we should use it in ways that honor the Lord and don't cause harm. In the same way that people eventually learned they could use radio waves to evangelize third world countries that you can't go across the border into. If we rely on AI too much, we will forget how to be human. In the same way that people need to learn math before they learn to use a calculator. We need to not forget what it's like to be human. We need to not rely on it too much. But if we ignore it, we will be leaving on the table an incredible tool for good. Like using electricity, the proper way to do it, the balance there will be us interacting with each other and helping each other and thinking through it and learning from others. But we should use it as a tool to glorify God. And second, or fifth statement, second encouragement to us, we will not be the only ones using it, and even we won't always use it rightly. Most will use it without any view towards God at all, and people will be hurt. There's no way around this. People are hurt that use smartphones are amazing. Social media, amazing. And people are hurt by it. I love them. I think they're wonderful tools. You have to use them carefully, especially when you put them in the hands of kids. Well, this is beyond that. The temptation to our kids that will come through AI make social media and smartphones look really minor. There are going to be massive changes in society. Again, I'm not a prophet. I'm not predicting here. I'm just trying to give discernment on direction. The way I see it, there are going to be massive changes in society, no less than what the internet, smartphones, social media, industrial revolution, think of all the things that have changed the way we live. And all of those things, to me, are good things. But they've also caused lots of problems. Isolation, depression, lack of intellectual growth, rigor, pornography. Industrial revolution, again, I'm not saying it was all bad, but it did ruin a lot of people. It ruined a lot of families and communities. And in the quest for wealth and domination, families and people get run over. And that's going to happen here too. And it will only happen much faster because things are moving really fast right now. As a people, as a human race, we are not good at change. We're not good with these massive tectonic shifts. And people will be left behind as we race ahead, as people race ahead to be the conquerors. People will get left behind. AI will come faster. People are going to be hurt. And we should, second, do our best to be in a position to help people whenever it comes. I don't know what that means. It at least means having a heart ready to help. It may also mean preparing to have means, living in a way that we have means to help. Because as society shifts in these tectonic ways, people will get run over. And we need to be there to help, not just chasing the next thing. And that's not easy, as you all know. It's hard enough just for us to, my Bible is falling apart here, It's hard enough just for me to keep things in order in my own life. But we need to at least be developing a heart to help. And we should use AI in ways that glorify God. Now, two quick addendums before we go into question and answer. Again, first, if we thought the internet, social media, smartphones were temptations for pornography, idleness, immorality, we've seen nothing yet. AI is going to take this to a new level. We would need to devote an entire message to this, but I just want to say, as parents, grandparents, temptation is going to arise exponentially. And our vigilance will have to rise with it. Again, I'm not saying that we lock everything down. I'm just saying we have to be observant and vigilant, because that's going to take it to a new level. I mean, the interactivity of this technology compared to, you know, what smartphones and the internet have done is just made it very accessible. Pornography is easy to get to. Well, now it's not just accessible, it's interactive. And it's going to be incredibly tempting and ruin a lot of people. Second, I don't think AI is the mark of the beast or anything like that. I'm not opposed to the idea. Indeed, I'm inclined to believe that AI may be a culminating or close to culminating technology for you. It's amazing. But it's good for every generation to think that they're the last. That's not an unhealthy thing. It's mocked sometimes, like everybody's always thought they were last. That's not a bad thing. That's not an unhealthy thing. It's bad if you start to set dates and don't work, and but it's not bad. And I cannot, and I can't see AI not being a part of God's unfolding of His plan, and how the tribulation, what's described in Revelation, I can't see it not being a part. So I'm not saying it is. Again, to me, it's neutral. It's a technology. That's my belief, at least. It can be used for good, and it will be used for bad. But I don't think using it is the mark of the beast, and I don't want any of us to think that way. The mark of the beast will be, you can't buy or sell without it. Like nobody has been approached with that, and in fact, my belief, I don't know if we all share it, is again that the church will actually be raptured before the tribulation. So, but having said that, it is viewed that way by some, is that you should avoid it, and again, radio was viewed that way before. I don't, as bad as it is, as tempting as it's going to cause for people, not just young people, for us too, as humans, it's not evil incarnate. It's not evil. You know what it is? It's us as humans getting together and taking all our collective wisdom and making it really accessible and fast to generate new things. And there's nothing inherently evil about that. It's just very powerful. It could be used and will be used, even if not maliciously. It will be used maliciously too, don't get me wrong. But people using maliciously now, spam gets a lot better in the future. Your ability to, that CFO, that they did the video of him, that was amazing. Amazing in a bad sense, amazing. It's going to be harder and harder to tell truth from error. But having said that, it doesn't mean that the technology is evil if it's stewarded in evil ways by some. All right, so hopefully that helps. Again, let me just review those as you're thinking about questions or even things, discussion. This is open for you, but just the 5 things were, it is an amazing invention. We're beyond discussing whether it's something we should do. And it does not do to say AI is evil and we should avoid it. We should use it for God's glory, and we should be prepared to help others, because as it causes changes in our world, people are going to get hurt, left behind. And 2 addendums. We're going to have to rise in our vigilance, because it's going to make things worse in terms of temptations. And again, I don't think it is evil. Okay, what questions or comments do any of you have about it? Ken?
This may be too far afield from what you've introduced to us, but could you briefly talk about what is quantum computing and how quantum is thought to impact AI capability?
Quantum computing is something I heard about in the class I met Donna in physics class at Georgia Tech, 26, 27 years ago. And it has not been able to have a breakthrough. We've had small breakthroughs over that time. But if, like AGI, if we were to break through in quantum computing, it would, maybe that would be the culminant, because essentially what it does is things that today, and I won't get into the physics of it, but the physics are essentially, instead of using transistors, we use things like atoms for holding information. And if we're able to do that, then things that today would take a computer, like all of our security, all of our cybersecurity is based on the fact that it's really hard for computers to factor numbers into prime numbers. I mean, that's the math of it. And it takes computers, it would take computers, you know, hundreds and thousands of years to crack that. But with quantum computing, computers are so much faster that you could do that in minutes that would take current computers hundreds and thousands of years to finish. Now, they have to be housed at like 0 degree Kelvin. Do y'all remember Kelvin from chemistry class? It's like you gotta go beyond like the stuff. It has to be housed in really cold units. We can't scale them yet, but they're promising. And again, who knows when the breakthrough will come. But that would make things like, today, it takes billions of dollars and a lot of time, you know, months or, you know, to train these things. Well, that's out the door at that point. Kyle.
You know how in Revelation it talks about how they go to war on horses and things, and like we don't use horses anymore. Do you think it's possible that people rely on AI so much that they forget how to, like, I don't know, think for themselves and they go after using horses, or is that just what they use because there weren't such a thing as
I don't think so. My guess would be that, you know, they were seeing that it would have been hard probably for the Apostle John to see cars and F-16s and, you know, so he's seeing battles in the way that would make sense to him. Yeah. Would be the way I would explain it right now.
Could you speak briefly about the biblical ethics of content creation using AI?
Yes.
A sermon, term paper,
Yes.
Bible study.
Yes, so I need to remember to repeat questions too. Kenneth's first question was talk about quantum computing. Kyla's question was, in Revelation, there's like horses and things that we don't use anymore described. And what might that be that people have forgotten how to, you know, do things, and so they're back to riding horses. Kenneth's third question, or the third question, Kenneth's second question was, what about the ethics of content creation? Because again, you can write term papers in one second. You just, you know, type in your prompt and you got a term paper. So I would say there's two things. One, I would say, as I mentioned, if you rely overly on AI, you will forget to be human. You will not know how to be human. And maybe you're like, I don't care. That's fine. Well, that's not fine. And maybe there's a world where AI takes care of everything. I don't want to forget to be human. I want to be able to write poetry myself. I want to be able to, you know, have thoughts myself. I don't want, even if that's a utopia, a world where I don't even have to, just let it go. I don't want that. I want to be able, I was created in God's image. So if you do that, if a student were to cheat or to use that tool, you will be the one that's harmed in the end. You might get through, you can always, but you will be the one harmed. So that's the first thing I would just say. It's one of those things that, you know, the person who pushes, in the proverb, the guy who pushes the stone up the hill to push on somebody else, he's the one that rolls back on it. Right? And that's the principle here, is that you will be the one harmed if you do it. Second, each class or each situation will tell you what is appropriate or not. And you should follow the rules of that class or situation. So if you're in an English class and they say do not use AI at all, then you should not use AI at all. Or if you're I'm in a class right now where they say on tests you can use AI if you want. So it's allowed, it's okay, you know, at work. We are trying to figure out how, we're not going, hey, it's cheating if you don't, we're trying to figure out how to use AI because it's so much faster to develop programs using it than not, and that's okay. But then there's even rules there, there's legal rules, like, hey, if you're using someone else's code, like, you have to pay them for it, you have to, you know, there's still things you have to follow. So I think that, to me, the two things I would say are, one, you don't want to rely so much on it that you forget how to be human. That would be a down thing. That would be not good for you. And then second, whatever your circumstance, there are rules that are defined, and you need to follow those in honoring the Lord, because the Lord tells us to honor those that are in authority over us. If those are teachers, if those are government officials, whatever they are, we need to do our best to honor them. And so there's ethics in that regard. But I don't think there's anything inherently ethically wrong about, like I said, I wanted somebody to read my thesis, and I wanted to interact with them on it. And I can do that with AI. And they can say, well, I think you're wrong here. I can say, wait, but what about, you know, I can go back and forth, you know. I don't think there's any, or even in generation, you know, like, I don't personally have a problem with saying, hey, here's what I'm thinking about preaching about. Like, what do you think? You know, and it interacting with me. I don't have any concern with that. Now, if I'm not the one bringing the ideas, or if I haven't You know, if I'm teaching you about the experience of the Holy Spirit and I don't know anything about it, I'm just reading what's generated, that is really problematic, you know, for all of us. But content generation on its own is not an evil thing. It's just if I'm not following the circumstances, or if I'm just relying on it, I'm wither. It's like not using your muscle. You atrophy. But it doesn't mean we don't use a recumbent bike, or it doesn't mean we don't use any technology to help us as we pursue those things.
So you said people need to be vigilant and or just careful, like just, can you just give a couple practical things and ways you can do that, or things to think about? I think that at least for me, I don't know enough about it to know what dangers could be there beyond just the podcast I listen to, you know, stuff like that. What is something you should be aware of or look out for?
Well, to me, it's just, so Donna asked, like, what does vigilance look like with AI tools? And I might be ignorant of what is out there or available, but to me, what it means is the same things we've been doing, given social media, given the internet, given, you know, smartphones, those things just become more important. It's not new things yet, to my knowledge, that we need to do. They just become more important because the content that is accessible now is much richer to use. It's evil, I'm not, but it's much richer, the kind of content that you can interact with. And so to me, it's, at this point at least, it's just additional vigilance, because the honeypot or the attraction is gonna be so much higher that there's gonna be a need for greater vigilance. I'm not aware of any new things that need to be done in terms of just being aware of what people are consuming, and us, let me just answer it, forget even just as parents. Like, again, we are all people. It's not like I'm not tempted as an adult, like I've reached some, you know, plane where I'm not tempted. Like, this will be increase the temptation to me too. And so I think we need to, again, pursue the Holy Spirit, asking, but we need to be open. We need to, like, with me and Donna, like, she should know the password to my phone, and my phone should not be separate from me. I mean, separate from her. Should not be, like, we need to be available. You know, seeing, I think anything where you're alone is where the situation is. So, like, I would just say, you said practical things. Like, I think kids and devices should be using them in places where other people are around. Is a very simple thing. I mean, some people may say kids don't use devices, and I don't have a problem with that. But I think another way, if kids are going to use devices, they should not be in their rooms doing it. That's the rule of Matt. This is not 1 Timothy 4:8. You know, this is the rule of Matt. I just think that would be, to me, you're going to cover a lot by that. Milton, I'm sorry, I saw Milton first. Melissa.
How do you see a church, you mentioned briefly sermon preparation, how do you see a church using AI in a beneficial way that's truly appropriate? Do you have any specific?
I mean, it's almost, if you're ever making decisions, if you're ever generating content, if you're ever ideating, thinking, you know, like, it can be helpful in any of those things. Like, it just synthesizes all that's out there, and you can interact with it. If you know, have a question and you want to interact on it, you can do that. And again, you can say, look, here's my worldview. You know, this is the way I approach the world. So, but I'm struggling to understand this. Help me, and you can interact with it even as an individual. So, you know, to me, if you have the opportunity to again, the temptation is real. Like, because things like sexual morality and pornography, they become much more real and interactive. But on the good side, like, you can read a web page that helps explain something, but now you can interact. And you can interact with someone, you know, like as a programmer. I have someone there, like, programming with me that I can interact with and say, well, why did you do it that way? Or hey, I want you to do it this way, or and it's very interactive, and so it's very powerful. And again, if you haven't played with it, you'll think it's magic. I'll say it out loud with my kids when I come to a traffic light and I watch the side one and I see it turning red. I always say to my kids, I'm really tired of waiting at this light. You know what? I don't know if y'all know that I have this ability, but I can make that light turn green. And I say, green. And then, because I watch this other one turn red and it turns. And, our little kids are like, so I'm giving up my secret friend. But that's how you're going to feel, but it's not magic. There's it's working through, again, I didn't go into detail, but it's going to feel like magic. And there's just, I guess it's too difficult to even just pin down individual ways that we could be helpful. Anytime you're ideating, questioning, brainstorming, generating things, it can help with that. Milton.
That's what I was thinking, that it does help, but it's also helpful to know the correct answers to certain things, because it will return.
It can
incorrect.
hallucinate.
Yeah, incorrect.
Hallucinate is the word where it will be very confident as it describes what you should do.
At the risk of prolonging when we're facing lunch, a comment on content creation. I spent untold hours in my life developing Bible study methods by listening to John MacArthur preach passages, just the way he went through developing, expositing. And I can sit down with a language model now and say, write me a sermon on Romans chapter 12 verses 1 through 2 in the style of MacArthur, and it comes
Right
like
away.
that.
Yeah.
That just seemed wrong.
Yeah, and it is. In the two ways that I described earlier, I think that example, so Kenneth asked, year after year of listening to someone faithful like John MacArthur, and you just learn through that, and now you just type in, I want a sermon on Romans 12, 1 to 2, and you just, in the style of John MacArthur, and you just have it. And that's true, but I think that use case fails both of the two things I said earlier. One, if you do that, then you are not developing in any way. Well, it's not true. You're developing a little because you're seeing what comes out, but you're not developing. You're missing out yourself on some of the, like lifting weights to get strong takes effort. It's hard. You have to, and growing intellectually, it's not just a pill where it's like, oh, look, it just came back. Like, no, you have to struggle through and struggle to learn. So it misses that, and then it misses because if you're doing that for a Bible study or pastor, there is again an implied contract there. You should have an implied contract of us that we're thinking about it, we're living it, we're praying about it. That's maybe we need to become explicit about it, but there's an implied contract in there that I'm not just reading a script up here. This is something I've developed,
Thank you for the word effort, and then the working with the Holy Spirit
Yes.
through
Yes.
accurately handling the word of truth. Because I'll just tell you, it's very tempting for me just to ask for a Bible study on a passage in the style of MacArthur or another one of my theological heroes, and just have it there. And now start from that place and then interact.
I would do the exact opposite. So it was like, I think you should do the hard work. You should start from, your engagement with the scriptures. You should work, try to understand it, try to think how you would explain it. And then you should absolutely engage once you've done all that. Whether it's commentaries, that's how we used to do it,
That's right.
or whether it's now, this. Either way, but the first element is you doing it. And Norma.
Are there plans to program any kind of ethics into their answers? And that gets a little complicated, whose ethics you're talking about, but any stopgaps, any boundaries that people who honestly want truth can punch a button and get.
Yeah, so Aunt Norma's asking if there are any kind of ethics or boundaries programmed into it. And yes and no. Like there were initial attempts, like Google Gemini. I don't know if y'all remember the early news about, like there were there was a certain ethic programmed into that people found, very offensive and wrong, and so, and you're right, it was sort of the current way people were thinking, but people look at it now and say, I don't want that ethic to come back from it. So that's where AI is an amazing tool, but it falls short of God's amazement, because it's just the culmination of all of humans' knowledge, which in the end is foolishness compared to God. Like all of our knowledge, amazing things that we've done, but it doesn't reach it reaches the level of the Tower of Babel, is the level it reaches. It doesn't go beyond that to paradise. And so I don't think that there is a person or the ability to make sure that it comes back as truth in it. So there's definitely that limitation. And I don't think, people have tried to program ethics, like the podcast Donna told me about that she was listening to. They stripped a lot of it out because people were developing these relationships with the AI, and then they were asking it for ethical things that it was not making good decisions on, and so it's been really hard to program that in. And so I would say that's one of the dangers that are there, that we need to use caution as we use it. It's an amazing tool for glorifying God. It's also dangerous. Social media, you can learn a lot in social media. You can get in a lot of danger with social media. You can waste a lot of time.
I was just gonna say about some of these things they're saying, it seems like it kind of goes back to what you said about calculator versus actually knowing math.
Yeah.
Like, you can use a calculator as like a crutch, but if you don't actually know what you need to know, eventually you're gonna get stuck. And it just seems like you always gotta, anything to be on AI or whatever, you gotta bring it back to what do I know about the Bible, which means you actually have to be there. You can't let it do a sermon 48 times a day.
Yeah.
In the time, like you said.
Yeah, at work, we say we're not going to produce we're going to try to generate all of our code, but we're not going to run in production any code we have not laid eyes on and reviewed. And that's exactly what you're describing. So we probably should break for lunch, and it can be a good conversation topic at lunch if we want to talk more about it, but we obviously don't have to. Lunch is optional. Again, don't feel compelled to stay anyway, but it is available if you'd like to stay and fellowship. So let me pray, and then we'll be dismissed. Are there any special instructions about lunch?
I just need maybe a couple guys to help put up a table or two right here in the hallway with some chairs, and then it'll be a few minutes, and then we'll have it out. A couple ladies want to help me get it out.
Okay. Elijah, Christian, Isaiah, can y'all be our Colt? Can y'all be our table guys? Okay. All right. Let's pray together. God, help us as we try to navigate the world. You've put us at this time, and we have challenges that people couldn't have imagined before. Different. They had challenges that we can't imagine having to live through. But it's the day in which you have placed all of us, and it's an opportunity to glorify you or to fail you and to bring shame to you. And we would prefer, God, by your Spirit, to be given the grace to remain in the faith and glorify you in the day and age we live. So help us to do that, Lord, and help it to be in many ways because of each other, because you've gifted each of us in different ways, and we can encourage each other, we can help each other, and you've given this small church all that you want in terms of gifting, all that we need, so that we can bless each other and encourage each other and protect each other and inspire each other. Lord, help us to do that now. Thank you for this food and for all the effort that went into making it. Thank you for providing it for us. And help us to glorify you as we enjoy this meal together. In Jesus' name, amen.